رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. The verse I just read is the words of the Prophet Musa. This is fine. Who, when he had to confront the Pharaoh, he made a certain said a certain prayer, which was he asked the Almighty to grant him eloquence of speech, because he had a deficiency, which was that he used to stutter. And when you confront big powers, you have a tendency to stutter. So I'm worried that I'm confronting big powers in front of me, so I might stutter in all of you. I meant that as a joke, but second thing I'd like to say is that I prefer that you sit in a circle. It is the Islamic tradition that when you hold a meeting, that you don't sit in rows, but that you sit in a circle, in a halqa. So can I ask the guys to just move your seats in a way that we sit in a circle? And the purpose of that is that it shows complete equality. Yourselves as well. So the next time that you have a meeting, students always sit in a halqa. That is our tradition, and it's also the prophetic tradition. I was asked to talk about two things. The one is to talk about extremism, terrorism, and the occurrence of ISIS. And I was also asked to talk about how to balance your life as a student and as a Muslim. I'll try and address both. Both, of course, are fairly lengthy topics, but I'll try to keep it succinct. I'm firstly very encouraged to see, let me move a bit back, to see an Islamic society that is active, like yourselves. And I'm particularly encouraged that you don't limit yourself to just Muslim students, but that you invite students, anybody, to participate. Reason being, in the times that we live in, Muslims are under scrutiny. And the best way to exemplify ourselves or to ensure that scrutiny does not work against us is to invite people to our midst so that they see us, so there is transparency. We have nothing to hide as Muslims, not economically or politically. But let me start talking about the subject of terrorism, ISIS, Jihad. And many of us are being looked at with suspicion about what is happening in the world. And Muslims are being watched very closely, yourselves included. And you will also be subject to intelligence and infiltration to find out who are you, what are you doing, what might you be planning. Many of us, especially those of us who would carry a beard or would wear the traditional garb, would be under scrutiny. And you have to accept that as a fact of life in these times. And there's a certain way that you would have to behave in the interest of your broader community, of all Muslims. Now, let's talk about terrorism. Is there anyone in this meeting who were taught by their parents to hate someone from another religion? By a show of hands. Is there anyone amongst us who were encouraged by our parents to participate in armed reaction or to kill other people for some reason. Has anyone been taught how to make a bomb or to shoot or to attack with a knife or anything like that? Is there anybody who's been taught like that? Is there anyone here whose parents, since your childhood days, encourage you to become a jihadi? I've not grown up in a community like that, and I know many of you, I know some of you, I know your parents. I know that none of you have been brought up in that way. None of us are encouraged in our communities to get on an airplane and fly to a place that we don't know, to fight an enemy that we don't know, amongst people whom we don't know. So what is it that's happening in the world that puts that kind of label on us? Now, what I might say here today might be very contentious, but it's my own view on the world, and I gladly share it with you. We have to go in history and look at what is the source of conflict in the world. Whether that conflict is in Iraq, in Tunisia, in Egypt, in China, in Russia, whether it was the Cold War, First World War, or the Second World War. Any great conflict. Are there students of history here? There must be some. You go into history, you'll find out that most of the great conflicts between societies or civilizations or communities, in my view, has never been about religious differences. It has mostly been about economic resources. Let's take, for instance, the so-called biggest war between religions was called the Crusades. What was the Crusades? The Crusades were an attack by a certain group of Christians from Europe, largely, who attacked Muslims in Jerusalem because Muslims were governing Jerusalem in those days. There were 7 crusades, of which the first crusade was won by the Christian attackers. All the crusades after that were won by the Muslims. Now, to fully understand the crusades, you have to study the history of Salahuddin Ayyubi, who was of Kurdish descent. Kurdistan is in the north of, northeast of Turkey, in the northwest of Iraq. And he was of Kurdish descent. Now you would find that many of the great leaders of Islam were not of Arab descent necessarily. He was of Kurdish descent. And Salahuddin, when the Crusaders attacked, the first time, he was only a boy. Not even sure if he was born at the time of the first crusade. When the attack happened, hundreds, thousands of Muslims were killed in Jerusalem. The story being told is that the streets of Jerusalem used to run with the blood of Muslims in the streets. That's how vicious the attack was. The second one, Salahuddin grew up as a boy knowing that Jerusalem has to be taken back. It was taken back by the Muslims. In the second battle, and they won back Jerusalem. After that, there were several attacks, but Jerusalem remained in the hand of the Muslims. But when Salahuddin took Jerusalem back, he did not act in revenge against the Crusaders or against the Christians who were in charge of Jerusalem at that stage. What he did was he followed the example of Prophet Joseph, and he followed the example of our Prophet. In both cases, when they took over, when our Prophet took over Makkah from the enemy, and when Prophet Yusuf confronted his brothers who had done a great injustice to him, as the Quran said, the first word he said was, La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. And that was the same words that our Prophet said when his companion Umar said, today is the day of victory over the enemy. The response of the Prophet was to put his head low next to the neck of his camel. And in humility he said to Umar, no, this is not what we do. This is not our way. To shout victory and vengeance, he said we must say what Prophet Yusuf said, La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. Today there is no blame on them even if they were the enemy. Yaghfirullahu lakum. Allah Ta'ala will forgive them. May Allah forgive them. So our tradition is not one of vengeance, of slaughtering, of maiming and killing. Our tradition is one of forgiveness. So when you confront the enemy, you forgive them for what they have done. And that is your ultimate salvation. That is your ultimate freedom from any, whether it is an injustice done by a brother or a sister or siblings over each other, or whether it is an injustice done by one religion over another, or by a parent over a child, or by one friend over the other. Our religion teaches us to forgive, to say, today there is no blame on you. The day that you gain the upper hand, the day that you gain power, is to say to them, the power that I have, the real power, is the one that obliges me not to abuse it, not to use to maim and kill others. Our Prophet, when he took over, when he had the victory of Makkah, could have killed everyone in sight. He could have killed everyone in sight. There's been one incident of one of his companions who went to preach Islam to another community. Sorry, not one, 70 of his companions who went to preach Islam to another community. When they came there, 69 of the 70 were killed. One survived. The one who survived, on his way back, met one person from that community who killed the 69 companions. And he killed that person in revenge. When he came to the Prophet and he explained to him, he said, they killed 69 of the 70. I'm the only one surviving. On my way back, I killed one of them in vengeance. What was the Prophet's response? He said, my response is to get the companions together, collect the blood money for the person that you killed unfairly. He didn't say, let's go and take revenge for the 69. He said, let's repay them for the one person whom we killed and offer them the blood money. That is our tradition. It does not mean that Islam says jihad is not our way. We are a nation, a people who will perform jihad when it is necessary. Now, when does it become necessary? Firstly, there must be a great injustice committed to people that compels you to fight that injustice. What is wrong with fighting an injustice? However, for you to take up arms and fight in the name or against injustice, it has to be decreed by the leader. In other words, the leaders of our society should decree that what is happening here is an injustice. Now we will perform a jihad. Does any of you know of any Islamic leader in our community who has ever decreed that we must conduct a jihad? I don't know of any. I don't know of a Muslim leader in our part of the world. So we are not encouraged, under the circumstances, to perform a jihad. The best form of jihad that the Quran teaches us, the best form, the highest form of jihad is the jihad, the strive against your own desires, the jihad against your nafs, your desires to have more of this world, your desires to abuse of this world, to abuse across economic lines, across sexual lines, across political lines. That kind of jihad. The jihad to refrain from corruption. The jihad to refrain from abusing other people. And the jihad to refrain from abusing yourself or abusing the earth. That is the true jihad. Haqqa jihadi. That is the true jihad. The jihad against ourselves. So if I must leave you with the first lesson that comes from this, in terms of how to behave as a Muslim, it is that your greatest jihad, your greatest strive in life is to strive against yourself, not against others. So dedicate yourself in your life to strive against control of the self, control of the nafs. That, in my own career, in my own years as a student here, and as a lecturer and a professor, and later as dean, has been the success of any person lies in the success you achieve over yourself as opposed to the success you achieve over others. Now the success that you achieve over yourself is ultimate discipline. Now the discipline is, it comes again in the Quran. We are told the story about the men who followed the Prophet David. We'll see it at the end of the first juz, where they went to fight against Goliath, against Jalut. And on the way there, they were told to read a certain prayer. And the middle part of the prayer is the one that says, ثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا رَبَّنَا أَفْرِغْ عَلَيْنَا صَبْرًا وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا. He said that these young people, they were very young, and they were weak against the big enemy. The prayer that they had to make was, they asked for sabr, for forbearance, for patience. In whatever you do, always practice sabr, patience, forbearance. Absorb what comes at you with patience. وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا. The second one is, make your steps firm and steady. In other words, throughout your life, throughout your university career, have this thing about ثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا. That means your steps must be firm and steady. That means, don't rush. Don't, 2 weeks before the exam, then you want to study for 5 hours a day. And throughout the year you do nothing. That's not our way. Our way is to be regulated. Regulated means you will study at certain times for a certain number of hours every day. That is ثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا. Not astag en vanag. Then you study, then you leave, then you study, then you leave. Afrikaans have a word called wispelturig. That is not the Islamic way. The Islamic way is to work consistently. Hard work is not what gets you there. Everybody will teach you must work hard and you'll get there. That's not really true. What I've learned was smart work gets you there. And smart work is consistently. Every day, 2 hours throughout the year, instead of 5 hours 2 weeks before the exams. وَثَبِّتْ أَقْدَامَنَا وَانْصُرْنَا عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الْكَافِرِينَ. Allah Ta'ala will help us to achieve success over those who do not believe. That in essence is how you balance your life. My time is almost up. It's almost Maghrib time. I hope with those few words I have provided you with some wisdom, some wise counsel about how to behave and how to act in trying times. And I wish you all the best with your studies. Remember, we are there to support you in whichever way possible.
Yo, Muslim.
Batu.